Welcome back to the Done Deal Show. Lots to delve into with Dean Jones this morning. A £40 million bid for Liverpool's Fabinho has gone in. Henderson on a £700,000 a week contract could also be joining the Saudi League and his former teammate Steven Gerrard. We're looking at Cancelo. We're talking about Man United's pursuit of Onana and Højlund. We'll be touching on Chelsea. We're looking at Spurs, Vlahovic, and a number of other deals for you today. Dean, how are you, my friend?
I'm okay, mate. Yeah, I was a little bit my nose was put out of joint a bit yesterday by the Saudis because they came hunting at Fulham. And I haven't been too bothered up to that moment. And I was like, no, Mitrovic, this is absolutely unacceptable. I started to become very unaccepting of the whole model that's being imposed over there. But £25 million offer for Mitro, no chance, absolutely no chance. What are you doing?
I hear you. It's funny as well because I'm seeing Liverpool fans celebrating online right now. My God, we might get rid of two players that we think are past it. 50 million, we can buy someone better. And I'm like, hang on. A week ago, so many of these same guys were talking about how money from the Middle East was bad for football. Now suddenly it's their money. Listen, I always say this to people: like everybody will condemn, millionaires and billionaires and the way the elites operate and where money comes from until they get money or they get a chance to better themselves or their lives or their football team, and they all go very quiet. That's because the world is full of hypocrites. But yeah, and look, the big one is £40 million bid for Fabinho. Yeah. This one seems to have come completely out of left field. Nobody was expecting this. A bit of an Ornstein dagger, as they call it on socials. But it just by the sounds of it, this one could really happen.
Yeah, so it's obviously a breaking story right now. I mean, as it stands, that offer hasn't actually been formally made, I believe, but that it is in the works. And Liverpool are anticipating a £40 million offer to land for Fabinho, and of course, it comes hours after they step up a second pursuit in Saudi for Jordan Henderson to go over there. Initially looking to take him for next to nothing. Now Liverpool putting a £10 million price tag on him, which isn't a lot. But if you're Jordan Henderson and someone offers you £700,000 a week compared to the 200,000 that you are on now, it's life changing. Like obviously, like for me or you, £200,000 a week. Yes, thank you. I'll never worry about anything again for the rest of my life financially. But for him to go from that to £700,000 a week is kind of like the same principle, like for me or you to get that sort of money is for Henderson to take this kind of further leap, which obviously sets him for life and beyond for centuries to come. 33, it's a good offer for Liverpool too. For Fabinho and Henderson to go, that's a lot of experience from the squad. Like that is a big chunk that you're taking out of that Liverpool midfield. And you think about, okay, like Fabinho not had the best time of things and gets his fair bit of criticism, but Henderson as well. I still think Henderson's got quite a big part to play at Liverpool, and I think in helping reframe that Liverpool midfield, I think Henderson is probably quite crucial. So I could see in a situation here whereby Liverpool would be more keen to keep Henderson perhaps than Fabinho. I think Fabinho at £40 million is fine. I think it also means that the noise that we've heard about Thiago leaning towards staying at Liverpool would be more likely. Obviously, they've made the signings recently of Alexis McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai, and that's fine. You consider that Stefan Bajcetic made his breakthrough last season, and Curtis Jones at the back of last season too. Like he was integral actually to the turnaround that Liverpool had. So what Jurgen Klopp does have to do here, he has a lot of midfield players and only 3 spots plus the Trent one that nobody else is going to play up for grabs. And that rotation is going to be difficult if there's like 8 or 9 of them. So to lose at least one is pretty important. And it'll be interesting to see if both of those guys do end up leaving. As I say, for Henderson, I feel like this is more pivotal than it is for Fabinho, because for Henderson as well, it's his spot at the Euros next summer, because Gareth Southgate is highly unlikely to pick him for his starting team. Maybe I don't know, maybe a squad at all. I'd imagine he'd still make it, but you don't know. Like it is a bit out of sight, out of mind for Gareth Southgate. If he can't be seeing you on a week to week, you are putting your spot at risk there. You look at Henderson when he's come back, these videos of him in training, like the guy's absolutely ripped. Never looked in better shape. Not that I've seen him that many times with his shirt off, but like you look at the guy right now, like the condition of him is absolutely peak. And it had the look of me to a man that was absolutely determined to show that he wasn't done. You're like 33, I'm not finished here. Like I'm still the guy that can dictate this midfield. I'm still the guy that can get Liverpool back to where they were. And now, obviously, Steven Gerrard giving him something to really think about. So it'll be interesting to see how this weighs up. Obviously, though, it is an extra £50 million that you can then put into the transfer market. It would make the Lavia deal pretty much a no-brainer because the Lavia deal should be around £40 million. So it'd be basically a like for Fabinho, which is great. And then you've got an extra 10 million on top of the money you already had left over from your last transfer, Kitty, to probably put into a defender. Like that's, I'd imagine, what you'd be looking at then Liverpool actually probably doing.
Yeah, of course. And look, I mean, I know a lot of people talk about net spend. I don't personally. I just look at money spent because net spend isn't real. It's based on your income versus your outgoings, really. But you know, they spent 70 million on Szoboszlai, and they're now going to get 50 million in for these two. If they'd have known that the Saudis were going to come in with this money, maybe they'd have gone and got Jude Bellingham because they've ended up raising enough money to be able to do that. But maybe Liverpool will look at it as if we can bring in Szoboszlai, McAllister, Lavia, you may be only be able to bring in one additional player if you went and got Jude Bellingham. But yeah, the transformation of Liverpool's midfield could be very interesting. I know a lot of Liverpool fans online and phoned into our shows last season believe that Henderson's absolutely finished. I know a lot of Liverpool fans that would call into our shows would say that Fabinho, legs are gone, he was past it. So there's a lot of Liverpool fans who've been asking for them both to leave, but when reality bites and they both might go, and suddenly your main midfield next year are young and inexperienced and have never played for a club the size of Liverpool with the expectations, it's going to be very intriguing to see how that works out. I think in terms of quality, talent they're buying or they're linked to top quality individuals, but as you say, that experience, because again, Liverpool's standard isn't to get into the top four. Liverpool's only barometer for success in the Premier League is winning it now. That's where Jurgen Klopp has got them to. So the question I want to ask the Liverpool fans, and I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below and in the live chat, is that midfield good enough to topple Man City and win the Premier League next year? Because that's your target. So I'd love to understand what you think and feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just say, for instance, you had a midfield that ended up being Trent in his new position alongside Lavia with McAllister and Szoboszlai ahead of them. Like it's just very inexperienced. Like Trent has played 10 games in this position before. Lavia has played one season in the Premier League. Alex McAllister, okay, he's done well at Brighton over a period of time, but it's not like years and years. And Szoboszlai's brand new to the league. That's very, very difficult to take over from Jordan Henderson, who's got 400 odd games under his belt for Liverpool in the Premier League, and Fabinho, who I don't know exactly how many games he's played for Liverpool, but 100 odd, whatever it is over this period of time. That's a lot. That's a lot of change going on, and we've talked and criticised. Well, I've criticised Chelsea for this in their model, whereby it's all very well moving on to the next gen, but you can't completely eradicate the old gen because you're leaving this gap, this experience and like football wealth gap, if you like, because they've built up this wealth of knowledge and experience that these guys just haven't had time to get under their belts yet. And that's why I imagine Liverpool will be trying to keep Jordan Henderson right now. Look, it's in Henderson's hands. They've got talks today. I think by the end of the day, we'll actually know which way that one's going. That's the briefing is basically that today is extremely key in defining whether Jordan Henderson is actually willing to go ahead with this offer. It's a big deal. Like moving to Saudi Arabia is a big deal for any player. And some of the names that have gone there so far haven't surprised me. They're players whose careers have hit a dead end, or that they're known for looking for moves like that. But Jordan Henderson, at this exact moment, if it was a year down the line, I'd probably be more accepting of it. But right now, as I say, like with Liverpool in transition, him ready to fight for his place, and with the Euros at the end of the season, very, very big decision for him in terms of whether he sticks with that or takes the money.
Yeah, it's going to be very intriguing to see. Viewers who want to know what you think and feel, hit the like button for us right now. Make sure you're subscribing and got the bell notifications turned on as well. A deal that's kind of, I don't necessarily say it's stalled, but is expected to maybe complete today is Onana to Manchester United. We know personal terms are agreed. Every day we kind of hear is today the day? Is today not the day? Fabrizio mentioned Wednesday or Thursday I think on Saturday he mentioned Wednesday or Thursday. Well, what's your latest understanding of this deal, and are there any problems for Man United fans to worry about?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit annoying that this is still dragging. It is a slow mover. There's no doubt about that, but that's largely due to Man United's financial situation. It's had to be the case because they can't simply escalate their offer to what Inter would ideally want here. They can't do it. They haven't got the cash flow and the open revenue to go and do it, especially at the same time as they're trying to do Højlund. So what you can say and what we know is that this is within touching distance now. Like Onana is there for them, and it has to be done. Man United simply have to get Onana. There's no ifs and buts here. They have to either invest the extra cash and accept that they'll further down the line they'll have to figure out what they do about the forward, or just talk into down, because Dean Henderson and Tom Heaton aren't your goalkeepers for next season. That is not happening. That's not acceptable. You don't let David De Gea leave the club if you don't know that you actually are getting Onana. That's as simple as terms as I can put it in. The player wants the deal. The personal terms are in place, and you've got a very, very small gap in terms of what you're negotiating over here. So it will settle out, I think, at just under £50 million. We know that Inter need this money so that they can also tie up their own move for Lukaku. So it's in their interests to go and get this done. Obviously, United are negotiating right now with two Italian clubs who are kind of rivals. Like Atalanta always believed that they should be in that conversation at the top end of Serie A now. So this has a knock-on effect from one Serie A club to another. But Onana is actually now the priority, which is pretty ironic given that at the start of this transfer window, Man United were like absolutely adamant. What we are doing is focusing on getting a number 9 through the door. And actually what they keep doing is kicking that down the road and being like, oh, actually, no, we've got to get Mason Mount. Actually, no, we've got to get Onana. What's the next thing going to be? Like, are United going to start this season without a new number 9? Like at this rate, yeah, they are going to start the new season without a number 9 because they aren't making the inroads that they need to on Højlund, and then they're not impressing Atalanta at all. So, yeah, go back to Onana. That deal will get done because it simply has to get done. And they need to tie it up this week so that they can take him on the tour. He's due back with Inter today. I think he's there. But obviously, like that is not part of his plan going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think we watched Man United's first preseason game yesterday,
Yeah.
and there was an irony actually that in the second half we played some better football out from the back because the young goalkeeper, Kavor, was much better with the ball at his feet than Heaton. Heaton is from the old generation of goalkeepers, and you saw a difference in how we were able to play out from the back, and it led to more sustained attacks. And we were actually playing probably a better Leeds team in the second half than we were in the first half.
Yeah.
And I think it was evident to Man United fans who saw that, because that young goalkeeper, I mean, I'm not overly familiar with him because I don't follow Man United's academy anymore, because in my protest against the Glazers, I've cancelled MUTV, so it's hard for me to keep up with it. But he's better than David De Gea with the ball at his feet. So it is a deal that needs to happen. I think United fans just sort of want it signed off. But we also saw in the first half yesterday, we can't be starting the season without a number 9. Sancho playing as the false 9 was a disaster. We saw this young kid come on in Hugill, who looked.
It's
I mean,
fine.
my first thought was, why weren't he starting over Weghorst? Like that was my first thought. His first touch was better, and he actually scored a goal. But yeah, we need that. We need that goalie. We need that number 9. And I know that we're working on a lower budget than ever. I do feel like the club's also trying to make sure we're not being hung, like bent over a barrel for these deals, which has happened many, many times.
Yeah.
But you also get to that position where you're like, well, look, it'd be great to have him in before the window shuts, but wouldn't it be nice? I know it might cost an extra £10 million, but to have Højlund in the squad for the full pre-season, to have Onana full pre-season, Mount full pre-season. Let's just say the next player after that is Amrabat. I'm just going to use that as a case in point. To have them in the majority of the pre-season tour would benefit us a lot more than two of those players being signed the midway point in August. You know, we've done it so many times, Man United. The year where we signed Cavani, we got him on deadline day, basically. Should have dropped the Sancho pursuit 6 weeks earlier, got Cavani in to be fully fit. And then because he didn't have a preseason, he didn't start playing until the October. And that's where we can't, that's where Man United make too many mistakes in the transfer market for me.
Yeah, look, Sancho is alarming. I mean, I don't like judging players in pre-season, let alone their first 45 minutes of action. But like, there is absolutely no way that Jadon Sancho can be playing that position again. Like, it's just not okay. He's just not made for it. He's just not. There was that chance he got where it looked like he tried to run his studs over the ball or something to get it out his feet. It was like, should have been an instinctive finish. Any other like proper nine, you sure would have stuck it away. But yeah, Sancho can't play there in the Premier League season. Anthony Martial isn't even going to be an option, I don't think, at the start of the Premier League season to play there. So it is going to mean, as it stands, playing Marcus Rashford as a number 9 at the start of the season. And yeah, look, you've got options out on the left. So it could be Garnacho's out wide. It could be that Jadon Sancho's out there. And you've got plenty of people that could play on the right. So it's not the plan. This is not the plan. It's like, this is so far from what was supposed to happen for Man United this year. They set out, if you're getting back to January, February, you're like projecting what was happening this summer, there was going to be this huge takeover. Frankie de Jong was back on the radar and they were going to aggressively go after him and they were going to sign Harry Kane. Well, they haven't got that takeover. Frankie de Jong's definitely not coming and Harry Kane is highly unlikely coming. And instead, you got Mason Mount, who, to be fair, decent game, I think is a decent signing. A goalkeeper that they didn't think was going to be an issue this season. Fine, I think it will help in the long-term scheme of things, but wasn't supposed to be happening. And you're signing Højlund, who actually, when they were first looking at targets, was on like the second list. So like there was always the possibility in this window that the big 9 would come in, but they would also sign an additional forward. Højlund was on the list of additional forwards. And now he's suddenly talked about as like a prime target. And they can't even get it done anyway. Is it worth the hassle? Does Højlund definitely solve the problem that Man United have got there? I don't know. Like, nobody knows how quickly he will even adapt to this level of football, especially the longer this drags on and the less of a pre-season he has, the closer you get to throwing him straight into the mix in the Premier League. United's conditions of pay aren't working. Like, their alternate methods of trying to just throw players in Atalanta's direction instead of giving them money isn't paying off at the moment. What they try next, I'm not sure. Klarna, not sure. But, you know, PSG being linked, United not really phased by that, I'm told. They're not 100% convinced by it. If it happens, it happens. I just am slightly intrigued by what the backup plan is here because I'm not really hearing of one. And I think that's slightly worrying. That, like, I'm hearing no noises from all the other targets that United have had. If you think of all the players that were linked to this role, there's barely any of them left. Like, occasionally you get, like, Lautaro Martinez is still there if you want him. Like, you could go and do that for about 50 million though. So it's about the same sort of money as you're talking here. Not sure he's the right kind of striker for United anyway. Kyle Muani is going to be too expensive. Osimhen's certainly not going to happen. Do you then get to a case where you're considering Moussa Dembele? Why not? Like, why is Moussa Dembele not suddenly coming into the equation at this stage? Like, United have long been linked with him. He's a proper goal scorer. He's certainly better than anything else Man United have got in that area right now. If it drags on, do you go to him or a Jonathan David? Or a
Mitrovic?
Or... Mate, I'm surprised nobody has actually even come calling, you know.
Again, he wouldn't be my ideal number 9.
He's not ideal for United, but yeah.
But he's better than having no number 9. And this is the thing. I was saying to Man United fans weeks ago, again, what are the fans going to do to force this takeover through, to release more money? all they've done is buy the new kits, subscribe to MUTV to watch the preseason, renewed their season tickets, and are again being Glazers. And this is what happens. We sing them, you know, that the Glazers play Man United fans like the Pied Piper. They always do, and they always will. And they can have their protests, and they can hold banners, and they can wear green and gold. But until they're willing to pull their money and crash the club to force the South through, that we may never get rid of them, and we may never get rid of them. 9 months now, and they still haven't been done. And the fans could easily have controlled this and just said, "Look, if you guys don't accept a bit of this level, we are boycotting." And I know Man United fans come out with this nonsense of, yeah, but the tourist fans will still listen. Those international fans that the top Reds call tourists love the club, and they are led by your example. And if you're pulling away because it's forcing them out, they will listen as well. So this nonsense that the ground will just be full of 75,000 tourists, I believe, is an absolute myth made up by people that don't have the cojones to give up, to sacrifice something personal. It's just a lie. It's an absolute lie as far as I'm concerned. With it, there's no grounds to believe it. And yeah, in my personal opinion, they're just too weak to push those Glazers out. They won't do what people like myself have done. Gave up season tickets, not bought a kit, not given the club a penny of my money in about 6 seasons now, in a push to force them out. What they'll do is just moan, but then perpetuate the situation by feeding it. So I feel sorry for the true Man United fans that have boycotted, that have sacrificed, that want them gone. I don't feel sorry for the Man United fans who moan about it, but will just give the Glazers their money and propping up this absolute joke of
it's quite a hard thing to let go of, though. I imagine if you've got a season ticket and like you do genuinely love the club, and you know with United you're not going to get that season ticket back because you're going to be pushed to the back of the queue. Like I've always wondered, like that emotional.
Oh, I get it.
That must be hard.
I do get it. It took me 10 years to get a season ticket in the part of the Stretford end that I wanted it, and I eventually got it. I had I loved it. I love going to games. I miss it. The amount of times I'm watching football doing this job, and I just say, not being there hurts me. My son, my oldest, is 8, turning 9. He asks me, "Can we go? Can we go? Can we go? Can we go?" And I have to say no to him. It's painful. I know how much it hurts because I've done it. But for me, it was always a case of, if I don't like how they're running, I believe the only way to get rid of the Glaze, for anyone that's only interested in making money out of you, the best way to hurt them is to take the money away. It's just so obvious to me. It is unbelievable. If there's no money, they leave you alone. You know, if you're gonna get shut, you know, if the mob, they used to shake down businesses. They didn't shake down the businesses that had no money because there's no money to take. They only went for the ones that were doing well, right? So listen, they're shaking us down. So what we do is we pull the money away and they'll leave us alone. But I know it's hard to do, but for me, that's what I call tough love. And being a parent, we know what tough love is. And that's what Man United fans need to do with the club, is there needs to be tough love. But we'll see
Bring
what happens.
Bring him to Fulham, mate. Bring him to Fulham.
I hear you, mate. I really, really do. In terms of exits from Man United, with any of them on the agenda, with Maguire, McTominay, Fred might be on his way to Fulham potentially.
Mate, it has to start kicking in next week. Like that's what I've heard. Like United really want to get active on this. Elanga seems like front and center of this at the moment. An offer potentially coming from Everton. I mean, Everton not flush with cash themselves at the moment, so might have to be a little cautious about what is actually offered here. But there have always been good relations between Man United and Everton, and it's actually been seen as a good actual avenue often for players to leave Man United and head to. Elanga's got a lot of promise, like a lot of potential. He's not ready for a club of Man United's size. He obviously had his breakthrough and became a bit of a cult hero for a bit, but by last season, like you just knew that Elanga couldn't cut it at the level Man United was striving to get to. Like Everton, they want somebody who's got a bit of rawness about them, no fear. They want someone to have a go, and Elanga might be fitting for that. He'd also balance out what Sean Dyche is doing with the squad. He's just brought in Ashley Young at one end of the scale by looking for somebody who's 38, but also got reams of experience in this league. But he wants the other side of that too. And Elanga, obviously, with his ability to cross and the rest of it, is perfect player for Sean Dyche. He's liked him for some time, I'm told. So Elanga looks like he might have a route out of the club. Like Van der Beek, he's going to eventually get a route out of the club, but they don't know even which country it's going to be yet. Like he's got interest in like literally 5-6 different countries. None of them want to front money for Van der Beek. So are they going to have to contemplate a loan? They possibly will. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely not what they're looking at. But Van der Beek might have to end up going on loan, so that doesn't help. Fred, Man United want £20 million for Fred. Nobody in England is looking to pay £20 million for Fred. I'm told that Fulham rate him around £12 million. Like, that's probably about as far as they would go on Fred at the moment. Obviously, there's potential for, again, Saudi Arabia to come for Fred, and they might actually be willing to pay 20 million. If you think they're willing to pay 10-ish for Jordan Henderson at that point, and 40 for Fabinho, maybe 20 for Fred, somewhere along the line seems reasonable. Harry Maguire, I don't know. I honestly don't know what happens here. Look, £50 million isn't going to happen. This story's back out that Man United value Maguire at £50 million. I haven't yet spoken to anyone who actually is close to Man United who believes that that's possible. I spoke to someone a couple of days ago who is, very integral to all the briefings and stuff that come out of Man United, and he's like, look, they're not even sure they'll get 35 million for him. If they could get 35 million, they'll take it. Because at this point, that's about what you're going to get. If you look at the market at the moment in terms of what you're getting with defenders, like Kim obviously ended up going for, was it 43 to Bayern Munich? And I know that was because of a release clause. That's the only reason he moved at that price point. But Harry Maguire certainly won't be moving in this transfer window above and beyond a figure that Kim's moved for. And if you look within the Premier League, you got the move of Collins to Brentford. Was it 23? I think he ended up going for. Koulibaly's left Chelsea for £17 million. Like, you can't have Koulibaly moving for 17 million and Harry Maguire moving for double that at this current moment. Yeah, Maguire's got to get out. Like, Maguire's got a Euros coming up in a year. Like we're talking about with Jordan Henderson, him putting himself at risk. Harry Maguire can't not play football. He's Man United's fifth choice centre back at the moment. I don't know how this opens up because of his wage problems. There aren't really any opportunities for him coming within the Premier League unless he's willing to significantly drop demands or United do actually pay him off. There's been like emotional links to like Sheffield United, but I spoke to someone at Sheffield United. They're like, don't see how we're going to be able to do that. Like, would love it, but just don't see how it can open up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Maguire's biggest issue as well is those wages. Those wages are astronomical. He's not going to want to give them up. I think what's going to end up happening in the end is, as you said, I think 25 million, maybe. And then on top of that, Man United will probably have to still pay a percentage of his wages until the end of his contract. So maybe pick up 50, 70, 60, 100, up to 100 grand of those wages. That's what's probably going to end up happening. But for me, this is a case. Sometimes I get you want to drive a good bargain. But there are times where you've just got to wake up and smell the coffee and say, do you know what? It's just getting rid of these players is also key because it's hard to bring in more when you've still got them on your books. The wages are a bigger issue sometimes than the transfer fees. Like, as you say, with Fred, Elanga, Maguire, these individuals are not wanted by the manager. To move them on means, again, you can probably move a bit quicker with new players coming in. And it just becomes a bottleneck approach. And
that's poor. It. And, when you look at what Ten Hag's done in the time that he's been at the club, he's been very ruthless. Like, he's made massive decisions since the moment he came through the door. And he's already made a decision on these players. To have them hanging around hurts him. It doesn't help him. Like, he doesn't want these players loitering around a training ground, hanging around on the subs bench, being around, because they've not got the vibe about them for the new era that he's trying to build. Like, look, Harry Maguire is one of the best voices in that Man United dressing room in his time. They're like, I was told, like, actually, for whatever you didn't like about him on the pitch, he was actually integral at one point of getting that team together off the pitch when they were going through a bad time. A couple of years back, there was a pre-season and I was speaking to someone that was on it, and he was like, look, Harry Maguire has been unbelievable in leading this group of players, but Harry Maguire is not the captain now. Harry Maguire is being phased out of this team. He can't possibly feel part of this. And if he's not part of it, you've got to move him on. It's the best for him and it's the best for the football club as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Now that I've been thoroughly depressed talking about Manchester I want to ask you about Vlahovic, because I've seen links to Chelsea. There's reportedly talks today that Chelsea are talking about him. Spurs have got interest. Also, PSG have been linked as well. But is a Premier League move for Vlahovic on the cards as far as you're aware?
I mean, it's not on the cards yet because nothing's been put in front of them, in front of Juve or Vlahovic. What we do know is that Juve have been fielding calls over the last week, meetings that were set up with the new sporting director there. And as part of that, they have been discussing player exits. And one of those is the potential of Vlahovic going. Now, look, Vlahovic leaving Juve is a big deal because when they signed him, like it was a massive moment to get him from Fiorentina. And this was not the way it was supposed to play out. Like it hasn't gone according to plan. But Vlahovic is great, and Chelsea see an opportunity there, but they haven't acted on it like very aggressively, which is strange. Because when you look at the fact they've got Brozier and Nicholas Jackson right now as their two nines that will be fighting it out, it's not good enough. Now PSG have been a little more aggressive so far. Like Juve are more convinced that PSG will actually make an offer for him, but they're not ruling Chelsea out. The Tottenham interest, I'm not convinced by. I mean, Vlahovic has been talked about for a while now in terms of Tottenham. And it goes back obviously to last season. The guy that's doing their transfers has Juventus links and stuff. So that was obvious. Look, Harry Kane's still at Tottenham. Tottenham aren't actually looking at Harry Kane replacements at the moment because Harry Kane's still there. Yeah. They don't intend to lose him. So I don't believe that Tottenham are actually looking for a Harry Kane replacement right now. If he does genuinely go, if Bayern put a new offer on the table next week and it's £90 million and Levy's like, I can't turn this down, off you go, then Vlahovic should absolutely be in that conversation because he'll be great. But so far, nothing is there. And in terms of Kane, while we're mentioning him, it's a real predicament for Daniel Levy now. Because, okay, so far Bayern haven't come forward with enough money. But if the next bid does get towards that £100 million mark, if it is 85, 90 million pounds, then Daniel Levy has to consider that because what it does is it gets him out of the Premier League. I know he doesn't want to sell him, and I know it's not in his interest to lose 30 odd goals a season, but it guarantees he's not joining Man United or Chelsea in a year's time.
Yeah,
and that is something that I know is being talked about around the club.
You know what, Dean? I was want to interject. Sorry, I was talking about this on one of our shows on Monday, and this is what people always talk about: Daniel Levy being smart, an amazing businessman. He drives a hard bargain. Letting Kane leave for free next year and potentially joining Man United, even worse, joining Chelsea, and heaven forbid, Arsenal. I'm just throwing that out there. That is far, and getting no money for him. Yeah. That's bad business. And Levy doesn't do bad business. Getting 80, 90 million now and reinvesting that, for instance, in a Vlahovic or a Lautaro Martinez and stopping Kane from joining a Premier League rival, that is Daniel Levy's business. So this notion that they won't sell him, my personal belief, I'm not saying you may have heard very different, and you probably have because Spurs won't put this out. I think they are open to selling him because they understand that there's no, in my opinion, there is no way Kane is signing a new deal. I cannot see it. Even for 400 grand a week, I would be flabbergasted if he did that, to be honest. That's just my personal feeling around it. I just don't see Daniel Levy being this stupid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so in February, I've got a very good contact at Tottenham who said for the first time, he said, look, for the first time, Daniel Levy is considering selling him this summer because he can't stand the thought of not getting the money for him. And he can't handle losing him for free. Like, this is the first time it's ever been a genuine possibility. So then it came to the back end of the season. I was speaking to him again. And I was like, so what happens? He goes, I don't think he's going to let him go. I was like, but remember we were talking about it's the first time he's considered it. And he said, he's stubborn. He's stubborn. He does not want to lose Harry Kane. And he's very, very worried about the fact that they have a new manager coming in with no Premier League experience. And also that Harry Kane wouldn't be there to see through that period. There's no stability left at the football club. So there's no guarantees of where these goals are going to be coming from or how you even replace him. I was like, well, that's fine. But obviously, like in a year's time, it's going to be even harder to replace him because you have no money to do that. And then,
mate, and that's just it. You know, the thing is, I actually have a theory. I was a bit detrimental about Spurs. If Spurs sell Harry Kane, they'll be written off. I did it in a stream. I said, you get rid of Kane, you're done.
yeah,
And then I reflected on what I said afterwards, and I realized I'm wrong. If they sell Harry Kane, they become a better football team. Not because Kane holds them back, but because they will be written off. And I've seen it in the past. It can galvanize a team. I remember when Wayne Rooney was sold by Everton. Everybody predicted them to get relegated. I remember that summer very well, listening to Talk Sport, Sky, reading the papers. They had their best ever Premier League season and came fourth that year. Now, Everton don't have the resources, and they're not the listen. Everton historically are a massive club, but they weren't in 2004 where Spurs are now with the stadium and the ownership. I believe getting rid of Kane, reinvesting that money, spreading the responsibility amongst Kulusevski, Maddison that's gone in, the replacement for Kane, Son, and others may better serve the team. Some of the biggest mistakes Spurs have made in the Kane era has been rushing him back and not resting him enough. Sometimes they put too much focus on him and it takes away from the team effort. And I don't think it'll be as bad for Spurs as they believe it will be losing him. I really don't.
they've got Brazil's number 9. Like, they've got Richarlison. Like, if it's good enough for Brazil to play with him as number 9, then
The new R9. Yeah, you're right. The new
so
R9.
you've only got to find a way to activate Richarlison. Like, they haven't done it yet. They've got him in the building. They don't know how to use him. Like, Richarlison's a great player. You've just got to figure out how to get him flowing. And so they've potentially already got like a forward in there that can do that. So you only need to add one more player that can potentially get even more out of him. And there are players out there. Mentioned Lautaro Martinez earlier on, like potentially him. There are players like Moussa Dembele who are available for nothing. There are players out there that can make things work, but it's a massive fear. It's a huge fear that you lose your identity. You lose your leader, the guy that's guaranteed to help you through tough moments. I know, like, it still wasn't enough to get them into the Champions League and stuff last season, but it still could be an even bigger drop off if things were to go badly under Ange. I think that's what a lot of it comes down to.
I totally get that. Back to Chelsea for a moment. I want to pronounce it right. Cherki. Is it pronounced Cherki?
Ryan Cherki, yeah.
Very talented player. I've read some stuff that Frank Leboeuf has said about him, that he's already one of the best in his position in the world. He truly believes. But another young talent that Chelsea are now heavily linked with. What's your understanding of that and other incomings at Chelsea, which seem to be a little sparse, if that makes sense? There doesn't really seem to be a lot going on. It feels like a lot of clubs are struggling with the incomings right now. But yeah, Cherki to Chelsea.
Yeah, so the interest has been there for a while, to be fair. He's bang on profile. He's a 19-year-old. He's attacking midfielder. He's versatile. He's already got like 100 games of top level football under his wing at Lyon. So there wouldn't be that many doubts about him being able to cut it at Chelsea. If you actually watch him, honestly, he's an unbelievable footballer. He's got very, very quick feet. He's got an ability to exploit space in a way that very few players his age would be capable of in men's football. He's got a fearlessness about him too, which I think would serve him well. It would actually be, he's a little bit like Hazard, to be honest. Like, he's a bit Hazardish, but what's good about him is he does like to play centrally, but can play out on the flanks too. So there are a lot of boxes that are ticked. The only thing I'd say about Cherki is that it's probably the thing that Chelsea just don't need right now. Like, there's definite interest here. There is definite possibility that they actually do strike a deal with Lyon, who they have very good relationships with. We're speaking to them recently, obviously, about Christian Pulisic. They were speaking about both of these deals kind of in tandem at one point. But they don't need him. They really don't. Like, Chelsea have already got players that can play in a similar way to this. Even Nkunku, like, Nkunku's probably a player that's further along than this. If you're going to play Cherki as like a 10, honestly, I just don't think that there's that much need for it right now. Chelsea are just crying out for this central midfielder that they're not getting through the door. And I'm sure we were going to talk about Caicedo anyway, but we might as well address it while we're talking now. It's just going so slowly, and that's not always a bad thing, because what we're seeing is Chelsea negotiating in the dark, if you like. They don't want this played out publicly. They don't want this being a repeat of what Arsenal did, when it was like bid rejected, like everyone being like, why are they offering such low money? Like, you're just going to wind them up. Brighton get rattled. They don't want to speak to you anymore. Chelsea didn't want to go through any of that. So they've tried to be respectful, especially knowing that Brighton are very good at getting what they want. Like, they will price players at top end of the market and usually come close to getting it. Obviously, Alexis McAllister got out for cheap because he had a clause. But if you haven't got a clause, you're usually going for top end money. And Caicedo and this £100 million price tag, I didn't think they would be this stern about it. I thought they would use it to then dip under that. But they're not actually doing that at the moment. Like, they do seem intent that his value in this market is £100 million. And Chelsea aren't getting to that level at the moment, and they're not really showing much intent to actually get there. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can manage to make a breakthrough. I actually sent a message to someone just before we were coming on here, so I better check whether that's come back. But if what I would say is that if they don't get that done reasonably soon, they have to start looking at alternatives, because they don't have anyone to go alongside Enzo who's got proven ability in that league, and Chelsea already struggling in that area.
Well, you know what? We were obviously quite damning about Man United earlier, and I understand it. You've got to move forward with the number 9 and Onana. But I also look at other clubs in this way as well. Look, Liverpool have signed 2 midfielders, but they need more. Arsenal have kind of got 2 deals done for Rice and Timber. They're not in the squad yet, but they're kind of the only ones who I look at and say they will be in for their pre-season tour. So, they're not due back now anyway because of their international commitments. So there's not really an issue. But kind of when I look at everybody else, it's almost an element of Kovacic has gone into City as an example, but there's still a lot of question marks over a number of their players. Spurs have signed a couple of unknowns, and Maddison. I do feel like, this isn't to deflect from Man United, there needs to be an increase now from the top 6 clubs when it comes to their incoming, because pre-season's begun. The Premier League is just over 3 weeks away from beginning.
Yeah.
So they come, and I know that not all deals are done by the start of the season, but I do feel like there's a lot of work of incomings to be done now. Chelsea are massive, Man United massively. I think Liverpool still need a little bit more. Spurs need a lot more in terms of if they want to compete. That is, if you get where I'm coming from, and it just feels a bit. I don't know what the word for it is. Everything just feels. Maybe it is, as you say, the negotiations are being done in private. Maybe they're not updating the media. Maybe they're putting a complete shutdown on this and a complete blackout on the news. But it all just does feel to me, as a football fan, strangely quiet in the transfer market, right? Or everything feels very delayed and long and drawn out.
Yeah. I honestly think it's got a lot to do with what's going on in Saudi Arabia. I think they've rocked the game and they've rocked the Premier League. And there are players that were not expected to be leaving Premier League clubs that have gone or are going. And there are players that were being targeted by the Premier League that have now been taken over to Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, at Chelsea, you could use the example of N'Golo Kante as the best one. He came through last season, like began to become part of things again. Chelsea were like, okay, we'll stick with him for one more. And then he's swept away, goes to play for Al-Ittihad, who no one had heard of like 3 months ago. And that's it. He's gone. And you're like, oh, well, we'd already agreed that Kovacic wasn't going to be part of things anymore. Mason Mount's leaving because we didn't, negotiate that as we perhaps otherwise would have. Ruben Loftus-Cheek isn't heading in the direction that we would have wanted, so he's leaving. And suddenly, you're like, okay, well, we've still got Conor Gallagher. And then they start talking about players like Santos as like, oh, he might be ready. Let's talk him up for a bit and make sure there's good noises around that in case he has to play. Like, he might have to play at this rate. Like, I'm not sure what Chelsea's pre-season is going to look like in Chelsea. One thing that has been very good about Pochettino in his early days is he's not messing around with like players who will and won't be here. He's like, you are part of my squad. This is my main group. If you either don't want to be here or don't look like you can be here, you're not going to be included. Like, so he's been very, very defined about setting aside the two groups. So I think that's interesting. But you're right. Like, there hasn't been quite the incoming intent that you would have expected. But then, again, like looking at the Saudis, there's say Ruben Neves, for example. Like, he's gone off to join Al Hilal, I think he went to. That would 100% have been an in Premier League transfer. Like, Ruben Neves would definitely have ended up at Man United or Arsenal or Liverpool. So little things like that do make a difference. And I think that's probably as part of it.
Yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. This super chat says, and this is why the Premier League is officially a farmers' league. The top six, apart from City, aren't serious. Our signing should have been done, have been in by now. But I don't think that's anything to do with being the farmers' league. Man United's situation is to do with. So there's a really interesting article about Man United's FFP situation that's worth reading. I was reading about it a little bit earlier on today, and essentially, when you sort of break it, when you break it down, like Premier League clubs and under sustainability and FFP rules are allowed 15 million losses over a 3-year period. However, they can have losses up to 105 million permitted as long as there is a 90 million pound difference is covered by secured funds from the club's ownership. So it means your owners like investing money in you. This is an example about Man United. And our owners in 17 years have not invested a penny. So all it would take right now for Man United to not have FFP problems would be 90 million pounds to be invested by the billionaire owners. And by the way, with how much money our owners have got, 90 million pounds is pocket change. They are worth tens of billions, right? 90 million is not a lot of money to them. They could stop this overnight if they wanted, but they don't, which is why I say to fans, we've got to take action. But I don't think it makes the Premier League a farmers' league because the Glazers are not investing money into Man United, personally.
No, and actually, you say no one's serious about things but City, but you think, well, look, City have a model whereby it's actually quite different. They're very good at selling players, to be fair. But then if you look at what they've tried to do in the transfer window, like City looked at getting Bellingham, didn't get him, looked at getting Rice, didn't actually go through with that. They've lost İlkay Gündoğan, he was one of their best players from last season. They've signed Kovacic, but that's not necessarily a like for like. Gvardiol was talked up, but if you were to flip it, I don't think there's any problem with the Gvardiol deal at all. I think that it will happen, but you could be like, well, they haven't signed him. Like, it's no different, really, to the fact Man United haven't signed Onana.
And that's the one thing I would say. I'm frustrated that Man United's business isn't done yet. Not because I think we're acting. The Glazer situation and the fans doing something about it can happen. That's a separate conversation. But the fact that City are angling to get prices down, the only one of the top 6 clubs who I look at and I've done really good business so far. And I know they haven't announced Timber and Rice, but those deals, as far as I'm concerned, are done. They're going to be announced. Has been Arsenal. Everybody else has still got, in my opinion, holes through, and City might have more holes generated if the Mahrezes and the Bernardo Silvas leave, but that's probably why they're not moving as hard, because they're waiting on that, and that's still it's not an ideal situation to be in at the start of preseason, not knowing who's staying and who's going, and that I feel that coupled with the Saudi league, it's weird. I really thought there'd have been more business by now by the way the league started, but it just seems like those Arsenal deals happened, the Mount deal happened, and then suddenly the whole Premier League and Maddison happened, and the whole Premier League just went quiet. It's like maybe it's the eye of the storm, and it's all going to pick up pace later on down the line. But yeah, it's very intriguing to me. I wanted to ask you about Cancelo actually, because I read a report yesterday that Arsenal are still reportedly interested in him. That's been a few people have said they haven't seen that, they haven't heard that. Where is he likely to go? Is there still interest from Arsenal, even though they're looking at Uri and Timber? And will he be staying within the Premier League, Cancelo?
Yeah, so there is still interest from Arsenal. They're not active on it right now because they're just ending phase 1 of their transfer window, as they would put it. So obviously they eventually get this Declan Rice deal announced. Like, there's nothing to worry about there, by the way. Like, I've seen a few like scare stories out there that this is being held up and that lawyers like taking an age to do this and that. But making checks on it last night. Like there's no problem. It's just taking a while. Like it's a huge deal, like especially for Arsenal. Like they're going to take their time over something like this and just make sure that everything's in place. But the Declan Rice deal is going to happen. In terms of Cancelo, I asked someone about this again the other day, and it was simply put to me like, if he is still there at the back end of this transfer window, then Arsenal might sign him. They're not looking at it as an absolute priority now. In fact, it's almost like a luxury to get Cancelo in this transfer window because they are pretty well set up now at the back, because they feel that this Jurgen Timber deal is very significant to how they're going to play next season. And they've still got backups. They've still got Ben White there and stuff who can play a couple of different roles. They're not worried about it right now. But yeah, if you look at what Man City are willing to do right now, I mean, it's not just Cancelo's future that's up in the air. There, Kyle Walker is being strongly linked with Bayern Munich as well, and you're like, that's pretty mad that City are even contemplating letting those two players leave. It's just a change of model, though. Like it's just coming away from what they were doing. And while people were trying to link players like Hakimi with Man City, like I don't think that will actually happen. I think that a Gvardiol was just more of the style of player that they're looking to replace these players with. So yeah, Cancelo is still up. Is still a potential. The only thing that could change Arsenal being able to get in on him is that Barcelona really like him. So if he was cheap enough, or they could do it on loan, something like that, then Barcelona would make that move, I think, for Cancelo.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, as you say. Could be a luxury signing for them. It's interesting what City are doing, though, with almost this approach of we just want to have 4 centre backs at the back and no more fullbacks. And I wonder how long until other people copy it. Or part of me sort of thinks it's new, but not so new. And what I mean by that is, for years, right backs and left backs, a lot of them could play at centre back if they needed to, and they were just defenders. It's almost, I'm not saying that there is a difference. There is definitely a subtle difference in what Pep's doing, but he's just done what I knew would happen in football. We've gone away from these wingers playing as fullbacks to having defenders playing as defenders, and it's that evolution of play. So yeah, it's very interesting to see what they do. But if City next season don't have Walker, don't have Gundogan, don't have Silva, don't have Mahrez, I'm not saying they'll drop off and they'll not be in a title race and they'll win nothing. But that's maybe it's going to be, KDB not looked as able to play twice a week, 50, 60 games a year. There could be an opportunity here. This is why the market for an Arsenal, a Chelsea, and Man United, Liverpool is so important, because there could be a door that opens here, just slightly. It may only be slightly ajar, but you've got to be ready to pounce and jump through it, surely.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say in terms of like their defense, I mean, yeah, like you look at their main ones, and they'll let Laporte go, but Ruben Dias, Ake, Akanji, like all absolute top level defenders, and so is Gvardiol. But then on top of that, they also have Sergio Gomez and Rico Lewis as players that have been integrated into this team over time and understand exactly what it takes to play this style. So I think that they would look at that as depth. And then beyond that, you just look at the way the side will slightly be rejigged. Obviously, Kovacic is coming into the midfield. Phil Foden is likely to have a position change. So we've already seen him dropping deeper at times. Like Phil Foden was always expected to become a player that ended up playing a bit further back and not in that front three line. I think we'll see that a lot more next season. We'll see Jack Grealish probably be more prominent in that starting lineup. City still might have to go into the transfer market for a player that they perhaps didn't expect to. Now, whether that is a defender they didn't plan on getting, or whether it's I don't know, like someone that replaces a Mahrez, for example, possibly. But still, they're not going to completely overhaul things here, because they feel that this has to be a step-by-step process, and they won't suddenly just go out spending money on players unless an unbelievable opportunity comes along. Like Rice, yeah, they went for him, but you never felt like it was, I don't know, fully committed, I'd say. I never felt that City were fully committed to that. They definitely liked him. They definitely saw an opportunity. They really wanted Declan Rice. I still feel like they could have gone more aggressive second time around. They didn't. They sat back, I think probably because they knew Declan Rice and Arsenal had an agreement in place. But still, yeah.
This super chat here says the Glazers also have incompetent people in charge. United are known in the football circles as clowns when it comes to the transfer market.
Do you know what? Like John Murta actually isn't. Like I don't think. I think this has changed. Like United aren't the same people they were running this as they were a couple of years back. and they negotiate things differently now. I don't think they actually are seen as clowns anymore. And I think that actually, when you look at their transfers from recent times, there's been more logic behind them, a bit more careful thinking. I still think, obviously, they have overspent on players like Anthony, for example, but like it was a tough one because they knew that they had to spend in that position. The management that was coming in insisted on it, and they did it. But yeah, I think clowns is actually a bit harsh.
Yeah, I look at it this way. It's more about, I agree with the first bit about the Glazers being poor, because again, if we would have run our club properly in the last 10 years, there'd be enough money left because we wouldn't have wasted it on projects to go, right, Kane's 110 million, boom, done, through the door. You wouldn't be negotiating with Atalanta because you'd be buying your second choice striker. The reason Atalanta are raising the price is partly Man United tax, but also because he's become our number one target. So hang on.
Yeah, I mean, when in your life have you seen Man United struggle to sign a striker of this level? Like, this isn't
exactly. But the reason the price has gone up is partly because he's now the number one target because we can't get Kane. It all becomes a knock-on effect of poor legacy problems in the past. And I get where they're coming, but you can't undo it overnight. This here says Cherki can play as a 10 or wing, inside forward on either side of the pitch. He is versatile, would be a great signing for Chelsea, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they don't want to miss out on him, so I think that's what's key. If somebody else, I don't. I'll reiterate, I don't think this is that important to Chelsea right now. He's definitely a great player, and I think he's somebody that Chelsea do intend to get in. If there's no more competition for him in this window, I think they would probably be happy to sit back for a bit. But let's wait and see. Like, they do like him, so if the possibility is there, they might just go ahead.
There we go. Dean, as ever, brilliant to speak to you, my friend. Catch up on these deals. Viewers, please hit the like button before you leave and make sure you're subscribing and have the bell notifications turned on. Another 200 people did it for us yesterday, which is out of this world. So thank you. We'll be back later today, 3 o'clock, with Big Steve for Straight Facts. So make sure you're all tuning in. That link is already ready. So set your bookmarks and reminders for it. Until next time, everybody, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And we'll see you all again very, very soon. Thank you.